Welcome to the Brain Pal podcast. We're on a mission to improve the world through neuroscience. I'm your host, Devin Rome, and today I'm meeting with Steffan Bankier. Steffan is the founder of Stasis, which creates a supplement to be taken with your stimulant medication for ADHD to help manage and balance the downsides and side effects of those medications. One of their taglines is Your Brain Balance, because they want to help you manage and balance the side effects that come with stimulant medication. And I thought this was pretty interesting because I'm actually diagnosed with ADHD. And at one time, I was prescribed Adderall, which is a stimulant medication, and it really did work very effectively. But the side effects for me were basically intolerable. It made my hands shake a lot, made me sweat a lot. It negatively affected my sleep when I already had insomnia. So there were so many side effects, for me at least, that it just was not worth staying on it because it was really negatively impacting my life. There was some positive to taking it, but the negatives were too much for me to bear. So the fact that Steffan even made Stasis was cool and interesting to me because I have firsthand experience dealing with the side effects caused by stimulant medication to treat ADHD. So in this video, you'll learn about Steffan, Stasis, and some of Steffan's advice for success. All right, let's get started. Alrighty, so we'll start with why did you make Stasis? What was your motivation and interest for that?
It's a great question. So I grew up, I'm actually surprisingly neurotypical, at least by today's diagnosis standards. My brother is my best friend, and he was diagnosed early on with ADHD. And my family initially resisted it. We went back and forth, tried tons of medication, and I just witnessed firsthand how brutal it can be to take stimulants in the wrong doses or take it incorrectly. The sort of difficult thing that I experienced through my relationship with my brother is that for a lot of people, stimulants are necessary. There's a stigma around stimulants, but for better or worse, it helps improve a lot of lives. But there's a lot of downsides that come with it. And so I was searching for a way to help my brother get around these downsides. And I was introduced to a mutual friend, to Dan, who is the founder of Thesis. And Dan also has a very interesting personal story about stimulants and ADHD. And he was working on this product with some of the leading scientists that you take with the stimulant and it helps protect your brain. And in doing so, it reduces the downsides. And I was just like, I literally, that day, I quit my job and we launched Stasis about 3 months after that. And so it was just kind of like one of those situations that you couldn't make up, you know?
I see, pretty interesting. So you met Dan, who is the CEO or the owner of Thesis?
That's right.
I see. And then you tell us about the partnership or whatever you can share about that partnership between you two.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. So Thesis has been around for quite a bit of time. I think 2 or 3 years. They've done fantastically. They're the leading personalized nootropic brand, at least that I know of. And they have grown a really interesting business and understood consumers better than any other kind of business in their category because the personalization aspect gives them access to these troves of data. And the biggest data point they found was that consumers were having friction either giving up their stimulants or taking Stasis with their stimulant. So there's a massive pain point and opportunity to create something that complements stimulants. And so they basically are launching almost like a little sister brand or partner brand within the umbrella. So we are 2 separate entities, but essentially they're our parent company. We operate separately, but for better or worse, we're really focused on accomplishing the same mission.
I see. Pretty cool. Now let's talk about what exactly Thesis. How do I keep messing that up? What exactly Stasis is? They're so similar that it's so easy to get them confused. So let's talk about what exactly Stasis is and what's inside Stasis. So can you tell us about the ingredients and what can we expect from the ingredients?
Yep. So Stasis has just about 18 different ingredients. There are 2 different pills to be taken. There are, 2 different types of pills that you take. So in the morning, you take 2 of the daytime pills with your stimulant, empty stomach or full stomach, whatever. And at night, you take before bed, 30 minutes before bed, you take 2 of the nighttime pills. And each one is specifically designed and formulated to keep you sort of steady throughout the day as your stimulants might otherwise cause spikes and crashes. So obviously, I don't need to explain the science to you, but the biggest issue with stimulants is that with the dopamine surge that they create, there comes a crash, right? And that crash is detrimental to the brain, but it also causes very immediate downsides throughout the day. So some of the more common ones that are addressed by these supplements are unsteady mood, irregular energy, that 3 p.m. crash, difficulty sleeping, and then obviously a lot of neurotoxic side effects. So the ingredients are all chosen to address these different pain points that you have throughout the day as your stimulant is working. So there's a bunch of different adaptogens, vitamins, minerals, ashwagandha, L-theanine, B vitamins, vitamin C. I personally have gotten really, really interested with a couple that are a little bit more rare. I would say that my favorite, so sage is one that a lot of people respond very well to. Obviously, we all know sage as being the most expensive and rare spice on the planet, but it also helps modulate GABA, which, as you know, promotes this feeling of calmness without making you feel sedated. I almost think of it like just this clear focus that you get that doesn't rattle you, doesn't cause jitters. So that's a big one that we really love. Another one is Oceanics. Are you familiar with Oceanics?
I'm not familiar. We didn't really talk about that when I learned.
But it's very rare. It's a microalgae, and it's grown in the ocean in Spain. You actually need a permit in order to get it. So you can't go to CVS and supplement it. But basically what it does is it's pivotal. It's an antioxidant that helps reduce oxidative stress, right? So basically helps convert oxygen molecules into much more, free radicals into oxygen molecules. And it helps promote the brain and reduce oxidative stress. That's another really, really interesting one. And then we have one called Venetron, which has been used in Chinese medicine for years. And it helps sort of reduce the degradation of serotonin in the bloodstream, right? Which increases your mood. And then it also facilitates the production of melatonin. So it has this sort of twofold effect where it's boosting your mood, helping you wind down naturally at the end of the night. So all of our ingredients, there are, like I said, 19, are tailor-made to help keep you steady, hence stasis, or getting us to homeostasis.
I see. Yeah, great name. Now, one thing I'm curious about is, how did you guys, because this is a pretty unique combination of ingredients, how did you guys come across and decide on this ingredient combination?
Yeah, so I was not as involved with this, unfortunately, because this is fascinating. Dan is a master formulator. And when he was working on Thesis, he brought on some of the leading scientists and neuroscientists to put that together. Excuse me. So we did the same thing with Stasis. I was there at the tail end, but essentially through research, through working with some of the leaders in the field, we identified the ingredients that are not just the most potent, but also the combinations that are almost synergistic and work best towards hitting the benefits that we want to hit.
I see. So it sounds like you got an A team, so to speak, to help assemble this.
I like to think so. I feel like you need an A team. It's not easy.
I see. Pretty cool. Now, what exactly are adaptogens? It sounds like a cool word, but for the layman or the people who might not know what that is, can you explain what exactly those are and what they do?
Yeah, so adaptogens, as the name implies, help our body adapt to higher levels of stress. So it's basically natural plants, vitamins found in nature. Interestingly, our bodies want to be at homeostasis. Adaptogens help us get there. In today's environment, we have a lot more exposure to stress, a lot more cortisol. Interestingly, adaptogens don't reduce the cortisol directly, but it actually works on our hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis to help us sort of take on the stress with less impact to our bodies. So it's been used in Eastern medicine forever, and it's only now becoming big in Western medication.
I see. That sounds pretty interesting. It's always been that East-West dichotomy has always been pretty interesting to me, because a lot of things like meditation and breathing techniques, it's new to us, like in the West, but it's not new to the East. They've been doing it for centuries, if not thousands of years. So we're just now learning about this stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. You guys are implementing some diverse knowledge and diverse resources into making this company and this product.
The way that I think about it, it's like we're using Western cutting edge technology, but leveraging ancient like time-tested plants and vitamins and minerals.
I see. All right. Now, with that being said, we talked a little bit about the ingredients. What sort of benefits can one typically expect?
Yeah. So everyone's different. As you know, every brain is different. So some people take longer to get the benefits than others. Within a few days, usually, I think the first sort of immediate feeling is the jitters that go away. A lot of people that take stimulants get this like anxiety-induced jitters. That seems to leave pretty quickly, followed by better energy, less crash. You don't get that 3 p.m. slump. The way that I like to compare it to is the difference between drinking coffee and tea, right? I'm a big espresso drinker. I like the jolt of energy that comes with espresso, but there's a lot of downsides. When I drink green tea, for example, I feel like I have that focus and energy, but I almost have it without any distractions, any other sort of nothing's going on in my head. It's a very calm focus. That is sort of what we're thriving for. And that's the L-theanine in the tea that's causing that. So
Yes.
immediately I would say mood and crash are the first benefits. Within the first week, you should have better sleep. A lot of consumers respond to not just falling asleep easier, but waking up more refreshed, not groggy, not necessarily out of it. And then over time, I mean, the cognitive support that it brings is still a little bit early to measure, but there's a lot of clinical studies that show that this reduces oxidative stress to the brain. It can reduce anhedonia. It can prevent dopamine depletion, right? All of these things that you may not feel in day to day, but that are literally wearing down your brain.
I see. It seems pretty, it seems pretty important and meaningful, and I'm glad it's having this sort of impact because I can somewhat speak to that myself. When I was prescribed Adderall, I used to joke that my hands would shake like I was Dr. Strange after he was in a car accident. Yeah, they would just shake all the time, and then I would be sweating all the time. So I wish I had this sort of thing when I was prescribed Adderall because I might have stayed on it. So this seems like something, again, that I think is super meaningful and pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's interesting because, we've been in business just over 4 months now. And the unfortunate thing, and this is by no means the fault of consumers, it's just the sort of environment we're in, is that the immediate reaction is, oh, more pills to take with my pills. And just because they come in pill form, it doesn't mean that every pill is the same, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's like, we could put this in a flower and maybe you'd feel better eating flowers or, blades of grass. But really what this is meant to do is to allow you to take that pill that you need to function, but to take out some of the debilitating side effects that it's causing, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to communicate that, but I think that over time we're getting there.
I see. Pretty cool. Now, with that being said, what are some of the customers and what's your audience saying about Stasis so far?
It's honestly fascinating because obviously we have some people who come back and it doesn't work for them, and that's fine and that's expected. It's not a big number, which is good. Some people don't feel any difference, and that could be because their brain chemistry is set up one way. It could also be that their stimulant's not right, but the vast majority definitely feel the benefits. A lot of them report feeling less crash, a lot sleep better. I would say that the stability and energy extending from the day up until night is the biggest one, right? So a normal circadian rhythm has you waking up, energized, and then obviously going to sleep. With a stimulant, that's completely thrown off. At a macro level, what we're seeing is people's circadian rhythms are normalizing. They're energized when they're energized. They're winding down naturally. They're waking up refreshed. They're getting out of this sort of cycle of relying on stimulants for energy. And they're just sort of really getting to that homeostatic level that we want them at.
I see. Pretty cool. All right. Now, one thing I'm curious about I know you're partnered with Thesis, but can you talk about what some of your goals are? I'd say to wrap up this year and then going into the next year, what some of your main goals and things you guys are working towards are.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're 4 months old. We're a baby brand. The rest of this year is really about learning, right? So we've made a point to stay very, very close to our customers. I call customers daily. I text with some of our customers on a regular basis. I personally handle every single one of our customer inquiry through email, through our Instagram channel. So I would say that we obviously want to really understand the customer that we're serving, the problem that we're solving, refine our messaging. Obviously, we want to sell as much product as possible. Right now, we're exclusively sold online, so we're really building out that channel. So that's our goal for the rest of the year. It's just to build the online channel, understand our customers best possible, refine our message, refine our product, our website, our packaging, and we're well on our way to doing that. Next year is going to be a big year, obviously. Having refined the foundation online with the website and messaging, a product that resonates, there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And really our goal is to get this into the hands of as many people as possible. So the nice thing about this product is that it lends itself very well to Amazon, to other channels, pharmacies, it's almost limitless. And so we have some ideas of areas that we can go into, but at a high level, I would say that it's going to be just like channel expansion. That being said, any small business needs to be nimble, needs to be flexible. So it's like, I forget what the general was that said this, but the best plans are plans that meant to be broken or something like that. Essentially having a plan, but knowing full well it's probably not going to go to plan.
Yep. Or that, what's the other one that goes, the plan is good until you come in contact with the enemy.
Right. That's the one. I was thinking of Mike Tyson, who said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly how it is. I mean, that's how it is in science and business or in life in general. So it's good that you have this, I think, mindset that you're going to have to keep on rapidly iterating and continuously improving. I think that's a good sign.
I appreciate that.
All right. Now, in addition to your goals, do you have any sort of like missions for yourself or thesis? I know this is a very personal thing for you, being that your brother has ADHD. Do you have any other sort of missions or bigger things that go above this? Because you seem to be sort of a big thinker, so I am curious about that.
Yeah, so this product can go many places. We named it Stasis because it's really about bringing people to homeostasis. We don't plan to necessarily, there's a lot of symptoms that are not being addressed with the current product. So there's some symptoms of people taking stimulants that we hope to address down the road with different products. There's also a bunch of other medications that people take that have side effects that we could potentially address. But I would say the mission at the core is to sort of empower customers or empower people to take the medication they need without worrying about what it's going to do to their bodies or without, creating these downsides, right? And we keep it broad because, again, amphetamines are just one medication, but there's a ton of other medication that are kind of unraveling our entire society and our culture that we can probably help improve.
I see. Pretty cool. And again, I think it's super meaningful and important thing as well. Now, a lot of people in my audience, they're either students or they're younger people or they're citizen scientists. For someone who wants to work in this space, kind of like the nootropics or the mental wellness or the biohacking space, if somebody wants to work in that sort of area, do you have any recommendations on that? Like maybe what to study in school or what to study outside of school?
Yeah, so the short answer to this is that you can kind of end up in this space studying whatever you want, quite frankly. There's obviously quicker paths to it, but I was a consumer psych and visual studies major. Like, I had no idea I would end up doing this. So I would say that it's not a question of doing it and then you'll for sure end up here. But obviously, if someone's interested in getting into nootropics or supplements by the science route, I would probably do, neuroscience, biochemistry, something like that. If people want to get into startups, for example, this is obvious, but computer science is probably the most needed field, the most necessary. I would say that the biggest thing is having an interest in the space. When I interviewed or when I was talking with Dan about this job, I had a personal link to it, both through my brother, but also myself. I was, out of college. I was 20 years old. I was reading David Asprey and Tim Ferriss back to back. I would order nootropics from Mexico with my co-founder at the time. We would be making little pills at WeWork, and trying to be our own biohackers. This is something that's been near and dear to me forever. So I would say that the biggest thing is to have an interest in the space, and then supported by, hard skills like computer science, like some kind of neuroscience. And for the guys that do business, it's really about, I would say, starting things, right? Like, again, it's very cliche, but it's insane when I went to business school, how many intelligent people by that time, even 26, 27, had never started a business, wanted to, but even by then, the habits that they developed were focused on a certain type of work style versus an entrepreneurial type of work style. And so to me, that's the biggest thing you can do if you want to get into a startup.
It seems like have an interest / a passion, have some sort of a skill that you can apply to it. And then if you're on that business side, try and start something as well, so you can get some experience on the field, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I forget if someone said this to me, where I heard this, but it's almost like everyone has at least 2 or 3 failures in them, right? Every entrepreneur, you're not going to hit it right out the gate, most likely. So start getting those failures out early. Start failing at 20, start failing at 24. And then when you're 25, 26, 30, 35, maybe you're going to start getting your successes under your belt. Yes. The people that start at 35, they're going to be a little behind, obviously. And
yep.
It's obvious that you're going to hopefully fail less likely at that age because you've got a lot more experience, but take some shots on goal early.
Yeah, I think one of those quotes, I think we both know a lot of quotes. I think one of them is fail early, fail fast, fail often.
There we go. That's the one.
Get it out the way. So this is a related question based on what you were talking about, like your time in business school. To what degree would you say that and the MBA program? Well, I know your MBA probably didn't touch on how to start a nootropics company, of course, but to what degree would you say it has prepared you for running a startup and being an entrepreneur?
It's very funny you say that, because I was talking to a friend very facetiously saying that I regret getting my MBA. I don't. Yeah. But it was a surprise when I went to get it. And it's obviously a big investment, but I would say the biggest thing that I got out of it was working in small groups with very driven, intelligent people. You need to develop concrete frameworks around moving the ball forward and also navigating very complicated work dynamics. So what I mean by that is a big difference between an MBA and not an MBA is not how smart you are or anything, but I can say confidently that every MBA I know at the end of a meeting is going to say, what are the next steps? Who is the owner of this? When is it getting done? It's a small thing, but these are the kind of thinking, methodical thinking, structured thinking that is very, very helpful, especially in a startup where there's so much inherent chaos, that having that rigorous thinking process is huge. And I will say, I'm the first to admit it, I came in with zero of that. I am as far on the creative side as you can be. And so for me to work and learn alongside these, investment bankers, consultants, whatever, lawyers, they rubbed off on me. And that is by far the biggest takeaway I have.
I see. Pretty interesting. Yeah, I think that explains it pretty well, because one of my motivations for this podcast and my social media is to get more people interested in this field, both on the academic side, but also in the private sector. I think a lot of innovations, kind of like what you're doing, a lot of that's going to come from the private sector because it can. I mean, we both know that the private sector can usually move a lot faster than academia. So I think it's important to know this sort of stuff. And then see what your point about like the next actions and the concrete actions and knowing what the next steps are. I think that goes back to like understanding processes and process management and process improvement, because that's what I've learned in my about 30 years of business. Because in the first two years, I knew what I needed to do. I knew about strategies and tactics, but process and being process driven and oriented and knowing how to manage a process, things that have to be repeated over and over again, and understanding systems, I think that's what helps you scale and go from a beginner, so to speak, to the intermediate and the next level. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's important for a lot of people to understand.
Yeah, it's funny because, so I would say the other thing also, just to add to that, is taking big problems and breaking them out, right? So there's massive tasks and problems that we have to face as a startup, basically like start a business or build out a paid media channel and just understanding what are the steps needed to take. When do we need to get them done by? Who is going to own them? What are the gaps? How do we fill that? What's interesting is I've worked in Fortune 500. I've worked in, little startups, and a lot of my friends who work in these Fortune 500s are just like, it must be so hard for you because it's chaos. There's no processes in startups. And it's actually the opposite. Because most startups understand how volatile and how chaotic their industries are, especially in the early days, they go above and beyond to create rigorous processes and obsess over having these processes, especially as they start getting to like the 20 employee plus mark. I've worked in Fortune 500, where I was blown away by how little of a process there was, because everyone hands it off. They assume someone else is taking care of it. Kraft Heinz is too big to fail. I can tell you from having been inside, I was just shocked at how broken some of the processes were. So it's an interesting sort of misnomer.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying about wanting more people to get into this field, because I think it's not necessarily the younger people, but I think it's going to be a lot of small and SMEs that are going to be bringing a lot of the coolest innovations, so to speak, like OpenBCI. They're pretty big, but I wouldn't call them a huge megacorp. They're pushing the conversation forward. Another company, Mendy, makes a cool headset that's pushing this whole thing forward. So I'm excited to see the future of neurotech and mental health tech and mental wellness. And thank you again for helping us push this sort of stuff forward.
Of course. I actually think also what's interesting to that point is you were talking about academia earlier, is going to be at some point, academia and business will figure out how to play well. And once you can figure out how to commercialize the brilliant ideas that the scientists are having, that is the sweet spot. And there's obviously a bunch of programs and research universities working on that. But as we get more and more into the science and the merging of science and technology, I think that's when it's really going to hit the inflection point, and we're going to really, really start moving quickly.
Oh, yeah, I think so as well. All right, now to wrap this up, I was taking a look at your LinkedIn, and you're involved in a couple cool things. Looks like some sort of a investment company. So can you talk about just cursory talk about that, and then kind of like what you want your impact, let's say outside of Stasis, what's your impact and what you want to do? Because you're still young, so I can tell you're young and motivated, and you seem like a pretty type A person. So I'm curious about what's your bigger motivations and impacts that you want to go for.
So first of all, thank you. I'm actually a lot older than I look, but I appreciate that. You know how old I am if you looked at my LinkedIn. But so the investment vehicle that you mentioned, Secret Sauce Studios, it's a very small angel investment fund that I use to invest in mostly what I call consumables. So initially it was food and beverage. Increasingly, it's becoming, supplements. I'm also very interested in the plant medicine, cannabis world. So obviously right now that's not on the legal forefront, but obviously it's, it's moving that way. So I make investments in those spaces in health and wellness. It's really awesome because it exposes me to other businesses. I'm passionate about food and beverage as well. I'm not able to work in it right now, but it keeps me close to that as well. Hopefully it's going to make a lot of money as well. But really the goal there is to just be exposed to a lot of interesting new businesses. As far as my impact, I mean, I'm not going to invent an impact. Like I don't know what the answer is to that. It's a tough question to ask. I can say that I think that building a business or building a brand is probably the best job in the world. And I remember thinking about this a lot, even before business school, but I initially wanted to be an artist at one point. And one of the things about art is that it lives beyond you, and it has a lot of interpretations other people can get. It touches a lot of people. A brand or a business done right is doing that in theory indefinitely, right? Like you look at some of the big brands in the world, especially the purpose-driven brands, above and like way after I'm dead, if I'm able to build a really fantastic brand, it's causing impact on a large scale, it's improving people's lives, it's providing jobs, it's generating revenue, it's creating an entity that is having a ripple effect of impact above and beyond what I did. And I don't mean that entirely, sort of selflessly. I want to make a lot of money. I want to make an impact. I want to make a lot of money. I want my family to make a lot of money, but I want to do that in a way that's not detrimental. That's obviously adding value and snowballing in that way.
Yes, I see. That makes some sense. I just finished Steve Jobs's biography by Walter Isaacson, and I'm not going to compare you to Steve Jobs. But I would say that he was talking about, well, Steve would often say that what was different about Apple and a lot of other companies was that most companies were all about tech or all about science. But what he did was he wanted to combine both the humanities and the science. So both the creativity, so to speak, and the logic in the science. So it seems you've got some of that as well, because you've got this background and interest in art, but also combining that with technology and science in order to push innovation and push the world, so to speak, forward. So I think that's a good sign. If Steve Jobs is any indicator, that it's good to combine both that humanity / art with the science and the logic, and that can create both great but also beautiful impacts on the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one last thing I'm curious about, because you're based in New York City, right?
Yeah.
So how would you say that affects your company? Would you say NYC is a pretty good place to run this sort of company?
It's a very interesting question. Well, I would say that my immediate thought is that just the access to talent is great, but at the same time, as I'm saying that, that's changing by the month, right? People are, especially through COVID, we can work remotely. There's access to talent everywhere. Our company is hybrid. There's a lot of benefit to being in office and working together, but at the same time, especially the engineers can do a lot of great work from remotely. The nice thing also about New York is that it is so connected, and there are so many serendipitous opportunities to kind of create business opportunities. So I can be with a friend getting a drink or having a bite at a restaurant or hotel, and someone overhears us. And this happened before. And they come over and they introduce themselves, and next thing you know, we're making a deal. So Dan, the founder of Thesis, is raising money right now. From an investor standpoint, besides Silicon Valley, New York is probably the biggest hub. Where else can you go door to door and have these meetings, have them come to your office? I mean, that's a huge, huge benefit that is still very New York, San Francisco, increasingly, I guess other areas.
Yes.
But I would say those are the big benefits.
I see. Yeah, that makes some sense. All right. Well, this has been really awesome for me. I learned a lot. I learned some cool things. I think a lot of people will get some value out of this. Now, if we want to find you and find Stasis, where should we go?
Yep. You can go to takestasis.com. You can also find us at Take Stasis on Instagram and TikTok.
I see. Cool. And if you want to connect with you, Steffan, where should we go?
Do you want my address or
not your address? Well, you can give it, but I mean, like, if you want to connect with you online.
Yeah. I mean, obviously my LinkedIn, or you can email. I'm going to give you the email that it's hello@takestasis.com. That's me. So if you have a question or something, hello@takestasis.com. The phone number is also on our website. I will be answering every single call, every single email for the foreseeable future. So I'm very, very accessible.
All righty. Well, thanks, Steffan. I'll put all of those in the show notes, a link, and then that email as well. So if you want to learn more about Stasis, then follow any of those links. Thanks, Steffan. This was awesome. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
All right. Well, that was pretty great. So if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a like and drop a comment to let us know what you think. Or if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, be sure to rate and review this podcast so that we can reach more people. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.